For almost 20 years, Nas stayed quiet. No interviews digging into the past, no long speeches, no public attempts to reopen old scars. The silence was almost eerie. But toward the end of 2025, that quiet wall finally started to crack as the legendary rapper began speaking more openly about the tension that never fully disappeared between him and JayZ.
I hit him and he said, "Yo, God, in no way was we up at Hot 97 disrespecting you. If we were, and I'm telling you this, I'm lying to you and I'm not a man." Jay knows he said this to me.
Okay.
I said, "Cool, bro. If you mean that much, then that means even if there was disrespect from any of his crew, he's taking it."
The same rival who once stood at the center of the most explosive feud in hip-hop history. What Nas revealed brought a powerful reminder. Some rivalries never really fade away. They just change shape over time. The clash between Nas and JayZ didn't begin with loud insults or diss records. It actually began with silence.
He's taking the blame and said, "Nas, my bad." So that was the end of it. We met at Stout Party again. I said, "What up, dog?" Yo, we had a good conversation. We smoking cigars and we chilling, my man. Everybody was there, the little girls from the hood, Shanita and everybody, my man, Lord, Bar Kim, everybody was there. We chilling. And I'm like, "Dog, you know the tension is brewing in New York City. And we can't do this because..."
A simple missed studio session that slowly snowballed into one of the most important rivalries the genre has ever seen. Back in 1996, the power structure of New York rap was already obvious. Nas was sitting at the top of the city. Illmatic had already stamped his name into hip-hop history, and it was about to launch him into full superstar territory.
We don't know what the effects of it, that it would have, the after effects. And he said, "No doubt, you're right." And we had a good conversation. He also knew the marketing of it. So I think it was inevitable for him to come at me at Summer Jam because he was dissing Mobb Deep. You know that's my Lil Thuns. So when you dissing Mobb Deep, somewhere down the line, here I come.
Rappers respected him, labels chased him, and his cosign carried serious weight. JayZ, on the other hand, was still fighting to prove himself. He had confidence, sharp lyrics, and a strong vision, but Reasonable Doubt was his first real shot at greatness. He needed credibility in that moment, and having Nas on the album would have meant everything. So the invitation went out. JayZ and his Rockefeller team asked Nas to pull up to the studio and record a verse for a track called Bring It On. People close to the situation say Nas agreed to it. The studio session was set, JayZ arrived, and the beat was ready. But Nas never showed up, and that quiet moment would soon echo across hip-hop history. Time kept moving, but Nas never showed up. On the surface, it might have looked like nothing serious. Studio sessions get missed all the time in music. But in New York hip-hop during the mid-90s, silence carried weight. When someone didn't appear, people started reading between the lines. To the Rockefeller camp, it didn't feel like a simple scheduling problem. It felt personal. The situation gave off the impression that Nas didn't see JayZ as someone on his level. That quiet moment planted the very first seed of resentment. There was no verse, no collaboration, and no time to wait around. JayZ quickly switched direction. Instead of holding the record for Nas, he and producer Ski Beats flipped the situation into something else entirely. They sampled a line from Nas's voice, pulled straight from the Pete Rock remix of The World Is Yours. That short clip became the spine of Dead Presidents 2, the emotional core of Reasonable Doubt. The twist made the story even wilder. The song that helped define JayZ's early legacy was built on Nas' own words. Behind the scenes, another surprising detail unfolded. When the sample was officially cleared, Nas ended up owning part of the publishing rights. That meant every time Dead Presidents 2 generated money, Nas quietly earned from one of JayZ's most personal records. For years, neither artist spoke publicly about the strange connection. Still, the link was there, tying their careers together whether they liked it or not. After Reasonable Doubt dropped, the tension didn't explode right away. Instead, it simmered beneath the surface, turning into subtle lyrical jabs where lines felt coded and fans began decoding every bar. Fans started turning into detectives, listening closely to every lyric. One of the first lines that made people stop and think came from Nas himself on the opening track of It Was Written. He rapped, "Lex with TV sets, the minimum." On the surface, it sounded like a simple flex. But once you looked at the context, the meaning started to feel very different. JayZ had filled reasonable doubt with references to Lexus cars. He mentioned them in his rhymes and showed them off in visuals, making that luxury image part of his brand. So when Nas casually dropped that line, it landed like a quiet jab. The message many fans heard was simple. What JayZ bragged about was just the bare minimum in Nas world. No names were spoken, but people in New York hip-hop were sharp. Everyone could read between the lines. That moment made fans realize something serious might be brewing behind the scenes. Then the entire city was shaken in 1997. The notorious B.I.G. was gone, and New York hip-hop suddenly lost its biggest voice overnight. With Biggie no longer there, a huge space opened at the top of the rap world. Someone was going to step into that position, and both Nas and JayZ believed they had a strong claim. JayZ made his ambitions clear on Where I'm From. In the song, he mentioned himself alongside Biggie and Nas, placing the three names together as the best in the game. Some listeners heard it as respect. Others saw something more calculated. Soon after, JayZ dropped the City Is Mine. The title alone sounded bold, almost like a public announcement that he was ready to take the throne Biggie left behind. Nas didn't speak much about it in public, but people close to the scene noticed the shift. From Nas' point of view, he had history with Biggie, senior status in the game, and a reputation for elite lyricism. Watching JayZ step forward with that much confidence clearly didn't sit right. The rivalry was no longer just personal anymore. Now it was about legacy. As the late 90s kept rolling, the tension slowly spread beyond just Nas and JayZ and started reaching their entire circles. One of the first people pulled into the middle of it was JayZ's protege, Memphis Bleek. Bleek carried the same confidence, the same swagger, and the same aggressive energy as his mentor, and sometimes his music felt almost intentionally provocative. When Bleek released songs that reminded listeners of Nas' style or lyrical approach, fans immediately started talking. Many saw it as a message being delivered through a proxy. It felt like a challenge without JayZ having to say the words himself. Nas responded in his own calculated way. He didn't rush into a direct attack. Instead, he stayed patient and let the pressure build. Meanwhile, the mixtape circuit was exploding with rumors and speculation. Every lyric from both camps was studied carefully. Every interview, every freestyle, every line got dissected by fans trying to decode hidden messages. By the time 2001 arrived, the tension between Nas and JayZ was no longer quiet. The subliminal jabs had run their course. The whispers were getting louder and louder across New York. You could feel the anticipation building across the entire hip-hop world. Everyone knew something big was coming. The city was just waiting for one of them to finally say a name out loud. That moment arrived during the summer in front of a massive crowd under blinding stage lights at the one place where hip-hop moments became history. Hot 97 Summer Jam wasn't just a concert. It was a public courtroom, and JayZ walked onto that stage ready to make his move. As the headliner, JayZ had full control of the night. Halfway through his set, the energy in the building suddenly shifted. While he was going at Mobb Deep, the giant screens behind him suddenly flashed a childhood photo of Prodigy wearing a dance costume from his grandmother's dance school. The crowd instantly erupted. The move was ruthless, embarrassing, and impossible to ignore. But JayZ wasn't finished yet. While Queensbridge was still reacting to the moment, JayZ leaned right into the tension and delivered the line that changed everything. Clear and direct, he told the crowd. Ask Nas. He don't want it with Hov. No metaphors, no hidden meaning. Nas' name echoed through the stadium loud and clear for the first time. In hip-hop terms, this wasn't just a jab. It was a public challenge thrown in front of the entire city. At that point, Nas wasn't just observing from a distance anymore. His name had been called out in front of thousands of people in his own city. The pressure was officially on. A few months later, JayZ pushed even harder. When the blueprint dropped, it included a track that felt less like a diss and more like a calculated legal argument. The song Takeover didn't sound emotional or wild. It sounded calm, confident, and extremely precise. Over a dramatic beat, JayZ dissected Nas's career piece by piece. He questioned Nas's productivity, his relevance, and even his business decisions. Jay framed the narrative that Nas was still living off the reputation of Illmatic, while the game had moved forward without him. Inside the industry, many people thought the attack was devastating. Executives nodded along and radio stations leaned heavily toward JayZ's side of the battle. After Takeover dropped, a lot of people quietly started assuming Nas was finished. The pressure around him was coming from every direction. His previous albums had faced heavy criticism, his label situation was complicated, and the public narrative around his career was starting to slip. Takeover didn't just challenge Nas, it tried to erase him from the conversation entirely. For weeks, Nas stayed silent. No interviews, no public reactions, nothing. That quiet stretch only made JayZ's record hit even harder. Every day that passed made people think the battle might already be over. Then December arrived, on JayZ's own birthday. That's when Nas finally answered. When Stillmatic dropped, the energy across hip-hop changed instantly. The track Ether didn't sound polished or calculated. It sounded raw, emotional, and brutally direct. Instead of breaking down JayZ's business moves or album history, Nas went straight at his identity. Line after line, Nas mocked JayZ's image and questioned his authenticity. He painted him as someone who followed trends instead of creating them. Nas even accused him of copying flows, styles, and confidence from the rappers who came before him. The references to the notorious B.I.G. hit especially hard. In one bold move, Nas flipped JayZ's biggest influence into a major vulnerability. The reaction was explosive. Ether spread everywhere almost overnight. Cars blasted it through the streets. Barbershops argued about every line, and radio stations couldn't avoid it. People didn't just listen to the track, they felt it. The record did something Takeover never managed to do. It cracked the untouchable aura surrounding JayZ. From that moment forward, Ether wasn't just the name of a song anymore. It became a verb people used when someone got completely destroyed in a rap battle. The streets reacted immediately. Hot 97 opened their phone lines so listeners could vote live on who won the battle. The results were presented as extremely close. But years later, people behind the scenes admitted there was more to the story. The calls flooded in and the response was overwhelming. Nas didn't just edge out a win, he dominated the vote. The numbers that reached the public were softened a bit to keep industry relationships smooth, but people outside the station already understood what really happened. The streets had made their decision, and Nas had the momentum. JayZ felt the shift immediately. This time, instead of responding with another calm, calculated strategy, he reacted emotionally. That reaction came in the form of a track called Super Ugly. The tone was much more aggressive, and the record crossed lines that made many listeners uncomfortable. On the song, JayZ brought up the mother of Nas' daughter and described personal details that shocked people listening. What had once been a sharp, lyrical battle suddenly felt messy and deeply personal. The reaction came fast, and it wasn't good. Even some of JayZ's own supporters winced when they heard it. Then something happened that almost no one expected. JayZ's mother heard the record. She wasn't impressed. She was upset. According to the story, she told JayZ that he had gone too far and needed to fix the situation immediately. That moment pushed things in a completely different direction. The very next day, JayZ called into Hot 97 and publicly apologized. The apology wasn't vague or hidden behind clever wording. It was direct and clear. In hip-hop battles, apologies almost never happen, especially in the middle of a rivalry like this. That moment didn't erase JayZ's legacy or influence, but it effectively closed the chapter on the war. Nas had answered the challenge, the public had weighed in, and the message was clear. Nas didn't need to keep yelling about it. History had already spoken for him. Years later, when Nas finally reflected on the feud, the long silence started to make sense. From his perspective, everything that needed to be said had already been said. The chaos of 2001 stayed in that moment, and both artists eventually moved forward into the next era of their careers. After all the chaos finally settled, something surprising happened. The anger cooled down, the constant insults stopped, and for the first time in years, there was room for both sides to breathe. The battle that once dominated hip-hop headlines slowly faded into the background. Nas quietly began rebuilding his momentum. Instead of chasing drama, he focused on the music. Projects like God's Son reminded fans why his pen had earned so much respect in the first place. The sharp lyricism was still there, and people started reconnecting with the version of Nas that made him legendary. JayZ kept moving in a different direction, stacking hit records and building serious business power. Then he shocked the industry by announcing his retirement with the Black Album. It felt like the end of an era. But the story didn't stop there. By the middle of the decade, hip-hop itself was evolving, and so were the artists who helped shape it. In 2005, JayZ stepped into a completely different role. He wasn't just a rapper anymore. He became the president of Def Jam Recordings. The hustler from Brooklyn had officially turned into a music industry executive. Around that same time, JayZ announced a massive concert event with a bold title, I Declare War. Just hearing that name sent the internet into a frenzy. Fans immediately started speculating. Many believed this would be a victory lap where JayZ took more shots at old rivals. Some expected disses aimed at 50 Cent. Others believed Nas might get dragged back into the spotlight again, but what actually happened shocked everyone. Halfway through the concert, JayZ suddenly stopped the music and shifted the entire mood in the arena. He told the crowd the beef was finished. According to him, it was time to move forward. Then he did something almost nobody inside that building thought they would ever witness. He called Nas to the stage. At first, the crowd reacted with pure disbelief, and then the arena exploded into absolute chaos. Two men who once went at each other with brutal lyrics were suddenly standing side by side on the same stage. The crowd could barely believe what they were seeing. Nas and JayZ shook hands, shared the spotlight, and performed together in a moment that felt almost unreal. JayZ began rapping Dead Presidents, the very song that carried Nas' sampled voice years earlier. Then the moment flipped in a powerful way. Nas stepped forward and performed The World Is Yours, the same record connected to the sample that helped start their complicated history. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone watching. It didn't feel like a cheap publicity stunt. The moment had real emotion behind it. Backstage, things became even more personal. By that time, Nas had already experienced deep loss after his mother, Fannie Ann Jones, passed away a few years earlier. According to people close to the moment, JayZ offered sincere condolences. He spoke to Nas not as a competitor, but as someone who understood what it meant to lose family. That conversation mattered. It cut through years of tension and removed the armor both men had been wearing. What started as one of hip-hop's fiercest rivalries was slowly turning into something closer to mutual respect. The reconciliation didn't end on that stage either. In early 2006, another surprising headline appeared across the music world. Nas signed a deal with Def Jam. The twist, JayZ was the president of the label. Just a few years earlier, they were trying to lyrically destroy each other. Now they were doing business together. Instead of tension, the move brought a strange kind of clarity. Their collaboration, Black Republican, felt less like a rivalry and more like two veterans reflecting on everything they had survived. Over the following years, Nas and JayZ occasionally appeared on songs together. Not frequently, but when it happened, it carried serious weight. Every verse they shared sounded earned, like history speaking through the music. Two kings who had once battled fiercely had now reached a different stage of life. They had fought, learned from it, and eventually moved past the need to compete so loudly. That transformation became crystal clear in 2021 with the release of Sorry Not Sorry, a collaboration delivered through DJ Khaled. In the video, Nas and JayZ sat calmly at a casino table, cigars in hand, dressed like men who had already secured victory. The energy wasn't aggressive or confrontational. Instead, it felt reflective, almost like two veterans looking back at everything they had survived. Behind-the-scenes clips made the moment even more genuine. Nas was seen reacting to JayZ's verse with clear respect, praising the performance and even giving credit to the harmonies provided by James Fauntleroy. Fans watching the interaction felt like they were witnessing real closure. But while the brotherhood looked strong on camera, Something subtle was shifting beneath the surface. Their paths were no longer moving in the same direction. JayZ leaned fully into visible power moves. His business ventures were bold, public, and impossible to ignore. Rock Nation, luxury champagne brands, major NFL partnerships. His empire was built around access, influence, and dominating elite spaces. Nas took a very different route. His strategy was quieter and far more behind the scenes. Instead of building brands centered on his name, he focused on smart investments through Queensbridge Venture Partners. Nas began placing early bets on tech companies that later exploded in value: Coinbase, Dropbox, Lyft, Ring. While JayZ was reshaping culture in the spotlight, Nas was quietly stacking massive wins in rooms most people never saw. For a long time, that difference stayed mostly under the radar, until New York. State opened bidding for new downstate casino licenses. Suddenly, the old rivalry had a completely new battlefield. This time, it wasn't about records, radio spins, or lyrical shots. The stakes were far bigger. We're talking billions of dollars. JayZ backed a major proposal connected to Times Square. The vision focused on a flashy Manhattan location built around powerful corporate partnerships and the constant flow of tourists moving through the city every day. It was bold, high profile, and exactly the type of large-scale move people expected from someone with JayZ's influence. Nas, however, aligned himself with a very different plan. His support went toward an expansion project in Queens connected to Resorts World. Instead of focusing on the bright skyline of Manhattan, the proposal emphasized long-term development tied to the local community. The contrast between the two ideas was striking. Queens versus Manhattan. Local investment versus a massive tourist hub. 2. Powerful visions moving in completely different directions. When the early decisions around the bid started becoming public, the Queens-linked project continued gaining traction, while the Times Square proposal faced growing pushback from different groups. On paper, it was simply business and city politics playing out, but on the internet, the story turned into something else entirely. Memes spread everywhere. Fans joked that Nas had delivered ether all over again, except this time it happened inside a boardroom instead of a recording booth. The irony caught a lot of attention. The same rapper who was once criticized for lacking business instincts had quietly landed on the winning side of one of New York's biggest entertainment deals. Eventually, Nas was asked about the situation in late 2025 during an interview. When the interviewer mentioned fans using the casino outcome to clown JayZ, Nas didn't play into it. He brushed it off calmly, saying people will always talk and there's no controlling that. Then he shifted the focus completely. Instead of discussing the rivalry, Nas brought up pioneers like Rakim and Big Daddy Kane, reminding listeners that his attention was on the bigger picture of hip-hop history and legacy. There was no victory speech from Nas, no hidden jab, no attempt to reopen old wounds. Instead, there was distance. He didn't deny the past, but he also showed no interest in reliving it. The rivalry had already played its role in hip-hop history, and Nas seemed focused on something bigger. But that same year, the culture faced another moment of tension that pulled attention back toward the same circle of names. In late 2024, a major storm erupted across the music world when the Super Bowl halftime show for February was announced. JayZ, who still held significant influence through his partnership with the NFL, helped select Kendrick Lamar as the headlining performer. On paper, the decision made sense. Kendrick was one of the most respected artists in hip-hop, praised for his lyrics and impact. But there was one detail that made the situation explode online. The Super Bowl was set to take place in New Orleans, the hometown of Lil Wayne. Wayne had openly said he wanted that stage, and many fans believed the moment belonged to him. When the announcement dropped, backlash came quickly. Several artists close to Wayne spoke out, including Nicki Minaj, Birdman, and Cam'ron. The criticism grew loud, with people accusing JayZ of using corporate influence to control cultural decisions from the top. Once again, attention turned toward Nas. This time, he didn't stay completely silent, but he also didn't take the side many people expected. When Nas was asked about the controversy, he focused on Kendrick Lamar rather than JayZ. Nas described Kendrick as the North Star of hip-hop. Not just a popular artist or a temporary trend, but a guiding figure that other artists could look toward when the culture felt confusing. He spoke about protecting the art form and warned that people who are not truly connected to the culture can sometimes damage it. Nas never mentioned Lil Wayne by name, and he didn't attack JayZ directly either. But the message still landed with weight when he called Kendrick the North Star. Nas placed himself in a clear lineage: Rakim, Nas, Kendrick Lamar. A straight line of artists who treated rap like a discipline, not just a quick opportunity to chase fame. Whether people interpreted his words as a quiet critique of the industry, a subtle jab at corporate influence, or simply a defense of pure artistry didn't really matter. The message still landed. Nas had positioned himself exactly where he wanted to be. Not as a gatekeeper trying to control the culture, but as a guardian protecting what made hip-hop powerful in the first place. Then, toward the end of the year, Nas turned that mindset into action. In December 2025, he quietly released Light Years, a full collaborative album with legendary producer DJ Premier. For longtime fans, the announcement alone felt almost unreal. This was the reunion people had been waiting decades to hear. The same producer who helped shape Illmatic was back behind the boards. Premier stripped the sound down to the essentials: hard drums, sharp scratches, open space for Nas to speak freely. The album didn't sound like someone trying to stage a comeback. It sounded like pure confidence. Nas rapped like a man with nothing left to prove, but still plenty left to say. He talked about money and success, but not in a flashy way. Instead, it sounded more like confirmation. His investments, his business wins, even the casino deal were framed as tools, not trophies. Because for Nas, the real prize was still hip-hop itself. The bars, the craft, the discipline. Critics quickly noticed the contrast. Earlier in the year, JayZ had been navigating corporate debates and NFL politics. Meanwhile, Nas was closing out the year with something simple and powerful: pure rap music. Fans started whispering again, but not about rivalry this time. The conversation shifted toward hunger, toward passion, toward who still loved the culture enough to simply step up to the mic and rap. And maybe that's where the entire story finally comes full circle. If you enjoyed this breakdown of one of hip-hop's most legendary rivalries and its surprising evolution, make sure to like